Welcome back to the Investor Professor podcast. This is Dr. Ryan Peckham, and this is episode 110. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the Fed killing the party once again. And we're also going to talk about how do you build wealth if you're Generation Z or if you're a millennial, right? So we'll discuss different strategies, tactics, things that you need to be working on or at least thinking about to build wealth and set yourself up for financial independence. That is all on today's episode. So get your mind right and let's get to work.
You dropped this.
Well, welcome back to the show, everybody. Thank you once again for joining me. And on this week's show, we're going to talk about how the Federal Reserve is really good at ruining a party. So the Federal Reserve came out this past week, made their announcement that they were not going to raise interest rates, but did say they could possibly raise them one more time before the end of the year. And so that kind of sets the market off. But the real thing is that they said that, it's the same narrative that they've been saying since the beginning, which is that they're going to hold rates steady for longer, meaning that the stock market was expecting them to lower interest rates sometime next year, maybe around June or so of next year. And they're basically saying, like, based on the economic data that we're seeing, we're not pricing that in. We're not expecting to lower rates that early. And so what ends up happening is that, the algorithms that are out there, they change their computations, they change their inputs, and they basically start to sell off because they don't think companies are going to be as profitable next year as they once did. And we should probably do an entire episode on just market structure. And maybe I'll work on that, where we just discuss how the stock market actually works and the structure of it. Won't be the most entertaining episode, but the knowledge out of that is very important. For instance, like most retail investors, don't realize that 50% of all the trading every single day is like high frequency traders, computer traders, trading off of algorithms. And, with AI and all that coming out, I mean, it's just going to become probably more and more of that. And so you kind of have to not really take some of these moves with the severity that maybe some people do. It's obviously not a great week. I mean, the stock market dropped $1 trillion of value this week, so I mean, just not a good week. But at some point, the Federal Reserve is not going to raise interest rates anymore, and we're going to be in this holding pattern. And then, I mean, you want to be invested when that happens. You want to be on the dance floor, so to speak, when the Fed is done raising interest rates. So, yeah, it's not good. It doesn't feel good when the market loses a ton of value in a week. I just feel like the selling this week was a little bit overdone. I feel like Jerome Powell has done a pretty good job of saying these things. I'm just not sure the market really believed him. And then he gets up and he says this and everybody gets shocked and everybody sells off. But you got to remember too, September is normally, one of the worst months for the market. And this September is no different than that. October can sometimes be bad, but things usually start to get a little bit better. And then November, December are usually pretty good. So, we're kind of on pace for that. So we will see, but that doesn't really impact us, not this audience, as far as putting money back and just kind of keep doing what we're doing and staying invested. So we polled y'all once again on Instagram, and one of the episode requests was building wealth for millennials and Generation Z. And so I thought, okay, we can do that. They're big populations, different spaces of their life, and let's talk about some of these. So Generation Z by definition, is the population born between 1996 and 2010. So pretty wide range there. We'll call these people who are either still in school. My daughter is considered a Generation Z, and she's in 8th grade. So it shows you how big the spread is there. So this is people starting their careers, and then you have millennials, which I'm considered a millennial. It's 1981 to 1996, which to me seems like two different generations. But of course, I'm on the front end of that. But this is either people kind of in maybe the middle of their career, or, kind of getting started as well. So we just basically it's basically people, let's call it under the age of 40, 20 to 40, starting out. What are some things that they can do to help generate and build wealth? So a lot of these things we've talked about before. I have a couple illustrations here that I want to go over with you to kind of bring this point home. But it's really like, what are the things we need to do to get ahead, right? And I have so many conversations every single week where I'm talking to different people. We're all struggling with the same thing, or it's something that we've struggled with at some point in our life. And one of the things that when I'm talking to students or people who get out, like when they're starting their careers and they're kind of getting started with life. And it's the same thing comes up, which is life is expensive. Like no matter what you're doing, life is expensive. Just existing. You're like, how can it be this expensive? When you start adding everything up, there's always something that comes up, right? So you have to take a proactive approach, which is what we've talked about on this show for years. A proactive approach to your finances and making sure that you are doing the things that you can do to put yourself ahead, right? So we talk about if you have to get another job or a side hustle or whatever it is to kind of get you through a period until you're making the kind of money that you want, or studying for school. So I made a list of like the big things that people are talking about when they talk about building wealth. And a lot of times that comes down to buying a house, maybe buying a car, maybe going back to school, building up your stock, your investment portfolio, all of these things. Now, the order, depending on who you are, what area of your life that you're in, the order of importance for you on these could be a little bit different. So you really need to write down, again, we come back to what are our goals? What are the things that we're wanting to accomplish? And when you think about your wealth or how your the life of your money is set up, like what are the things that are important to you? And that could be, a car, it could be a house, it could be your portfolio, but you need to put this thing in order. So, the game has changed versus a couple years ago. A lot of people, want to have a house on there, and I do think that is important, but you have to realize that on a $400,000 house, just where interest rates have gone in the last year, when you look at a 3.5% interest rate on your mortgage versus a 7.5% rate, which is where we're at now, that's a difference of $1,000 a month for your payment on that same exact house. So, maybe a house isn't the priority that it should be right now. Maybe you want to start saving for a house, but you don't really necessarily, you want to see what happens with interest rates over the next year or so and kind of let the market filter all this through. And so you just kind of have to think about, okay, these are my goals. These are the things that I want to go after. Which of these provides the best opportunity for me right now? Which one of these is the right opportunity for me right now? So I would say, the number one thing I can say is, especially if you're young, is you have to start investing early. You have to start investing early. So I did a quick calculation, and always difficult when I'm using my voice and you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm going to try to talk you through this. So if you take somebody who's 25 years old, so we have a 25-year-old person, and let's say they save $10,000 a year, and we'll come back to where they could do that at in a little bit. So we have a 25-year-old, they're saving $10,000 a year, and they're going to do that for 20 years. and we're going to say that they make, their return on that account is 8%. The historical average of the S&P 500 is 9%. So you could literally hit the easy button on this. If you don't know where to invest, you can go buy the ETF SPY, and that puts you into the S&P 500, and that's literally all you have to do. Like, that is the easy button. Open an account somewhere, put money into the SPY. Okay, so we're 25 years old. We're going to put 20 years worth. So from 25 to 45, we're going to save $10,000 a year at an interest rate of, let's call it a return of 8%. That's going to grow to $457,000. Now that person is going to stop saving money at 45 years old. They're going to save from 25 to 45, and they're going to cut it off. And then they're going to allow that money to grow for another 20 years. Until they're 65, let's say, when they retire. And that money will have grown to $2.1 million. And so they will have put in $200,000, and it will grow to $2.1 million. Right? So they save from 25 to 45. Let's say now they're worried about paying for kids' college or whatever, so they stop making that contribution and they just leave it alone. It'll grow to $2.1 million. Okay, now same example, but we have somebody who starts saving at 35 instead of 25. So the 35-year-old starts saving the same $10,000 a year, but they save it the entire time. They save from 35 to 65. Right? They're putting the same $10,000 a month, and they're saving for 30 years, 8%, same interest rate as the other person. At the end of that, they've put in $300,000, and that investment is now worth $1.1 million. So even though this person saved for 10 more years, put another $100,000 in, they still end up with $1 million less. $1 million less because of that, because of waiting. And, it's just a tremendous difference. I mean, if you look at, the rule of 72, the rule of 72 says you take your return, you divide it by 72. That's how long it'll take your money to double, right? So if you make 10% on your money, that means your money's going to double every 7.2 years. And so when you start investing young, it's those last doubles. It's not today. It's the ones 30, 40, years out there where you can double your money later on in your life that really make the difference. And it shows up in this example. So, what's the problem? Why do people who are 25 not start saving money? Well, when you're 25, life, again, is really expensive. Maybe you need a car. Maybe you're trying to save for a house. Maybe you're trying to go back to school, whatever it is. Like we always think, okay, yeah, it's great. I need to be saving money, but I really need this stuff right now. I can do that later on. And that little creep of like, I can do this later on, man, that really gets us into trouble. Not just in money, in a lot of things. I can go work out later. I can save money later. I can go back to school later. I can start a business later. Like those little things that we tell ourselves can become very detrimental to our progress in our life. So at 25, though, let's say you start working for a company and they offer you a 401k. Especially if they offer you a Roth 401k, you want to take advantage of that. So a Roth 401k, the difference here is that a Roth 401k, you don't get a tax deduction for it today, like you would like you would a traditional 401k. But that money is going to grow tax deferred over your life, and then when you pull that money out, you will not have to pay taxes on it. So going back to that example we just had, think about that. If you put $10,000 a year into a Roth 401k, and that grows for you all those years, that's $2.1 million at 65 that you don't have to pay taxes on. So you have to take advantage of that. So when you look at, the company you work for, especially if they offer you a match, like 5% of your salary, you put in 5%, they put in 5%. I mean, these little things that seem little, they add up to big things later on. So if you work for a company that offers a 401k, you got to take advantage of that. And I know you want a car. And I know you want a nice car, but that nice car that you buy is going to depreciate. And in 7 years, you're not going to like that car anymore. So if you're choosing between starting to save money and the nice car that you really want, I'm going to really caution you on spending the money on that car today when you can start to invest. So you really have to start shifting between what's a want and what's a need. And so you want the older version of you. Gen Z, you want the older version of you to be like, man, I'm glad I made that choice when I was 25 years old, 30 years old, whatever it is, wherever you are. Even if you're a millennial, wherever you are, like the older version of you, you want that older version of you to be like, I'm so thankful that I did this, that I put these things in motion. Because really, when it comes to saving money, like the number has not changed. The hardest number for most people to get to in their investment account is $100,000. But once you hit $100,000 and you start to buy into the system and you see that it's doing well and it's doing the things you thought it was going to do, you buy in and you're like, man, I want to save some more money, right? Like I want to get this going. Maybe I want to retire early. Maybe, all these things. Like it's all about giving you options. Same thing with going back to school, right? Most people go back to school. They want to have more career options. So you have to start looking at things in from the standpoint of, is this a good business decision? If I put money down on a house, is it a good business decision for my family? All of those things. So the reason I talk about saving money in your 401k before you start saving money for a house is because later on, when you go to buy your first home, you can actually take $10,000 out of your 401k for a first-time home purchase. And so you're kind of getting two birds with one stone here, where you're saving for your 401k. You can see how things go. And then later on, if you need to use some of that money for a down payment on a house, you can without any kind of penalties or anything like that. So it really does offer you a good opportunity to kind of get right, on the right foot on both of those. The other thing for both generations is, again, if you have some debt, student loan debt, credit card debt, whatever it is, especially credit card debt with interest rates going up, you got to get that paid off. Like you have to get that paid off. You got to figure out a way to get that paid off because the interest rates on credit cards are going up. It's going to get more expensive. That debt is going to become more expensive, especially on the new purchases that you make. And so you just want to be very cognizant of that. And realize that like money is no longer free. When interest rates are this high, money is not free anymore. So if you have some money in your savings account at your bank and it's not paying you any interest, now might be the time to go look around for different online savings accounts and kind of open an account there for like your emergency fund, because there's some sites that are paying a good amount of interest. American Express has an online savings account. Capital One 360 has an online savings account. Ally Bank has an online savings account. All of those online savings accounts are paying over 4%. And so what you do is wherever you really bank, you can open an account there, you link your accounts together, and then you can transfer money back and forth. But it's a good way to just earn a little bit of money off of your savings accounts. A lot of these, the reason that they can pay that much, if you think about it, like you can't go down the street and go into an Ally Bank and pull your money out. So, I mean, they don't have the overhead of having all these branches that they're having to take care of and pay the electric bill and pay the employees and buy the furniture and all that kind of good stuff. So because of that, they're able to pay a lot more in interest than a lot of the traditional banks, because they just don't have the same overhead structure. So those are little things you can do. Pay down your credit cards, get an online savings account that'll give you a little bit more interest. And, you can do those things. Millennials, for sure, one of the other things you need to look at is, especially if you have a family, you want to prevent disaster. You got to be able to have some life insurance for your family. I'm just talking about like term insurance. But you definitely need to look at what kind of insurance do you have if something were to happen to you. Would your family be taken care of? A 20-year term policy is not that expensive. There's plenty of places you can go online to research that and look at that. That definitely helps. Also, for millennials, especially if you have a family, you need to have a will. You need to have a medical power of attorney. You can do these a lot of different places. I mean, you can even go to LegalZoom.com. Not a commercial, not an endorsement, but you can go there and you can set up like a easy, um, not complicated will, medical power of attorney, and just the things you need to kind of prevent the big disasters from happening in your life. So all of these little things, I mean, they seem small and they seem easy. They seem like we could do it at any point. But sometimes you just got to take the time and you got to do it. And you really need to, write down, look at a list. What are your financial goals? How are you going to build wealth? What's the foundation that you need, right? The foundation that you need. And then you look and see what's going on out there. And you say, okay, right now might not be the best time for real estate. Might be a time where the Federal Reserve is beating up the stock market. I need to make sure I'm making the investments that I said I was going to make. Many of y'all who listen to this, we talk about goals every single year. Many of y'all set savings goals for yourself last year. Take time, reflect. Have you saved money? If you're an entrepreneur, like when I started my business, if you're an entrepreneur, one of the things that can be difficult as an entrepreneur is saving money, because you feel like you always have to put money into the business. But I mean, you are working in the business, and don't you think you deserve to get paid? So, you have to pay yourself. It goes back to paying yourself first. So when I started my business, I would pick a couple clients that I thought were, that were going to be around, whatever it is. And I would say, okay, the fees or the money I make from this client, that's going to go in my savings account. That's going to go in my savings account. And so I just picked a couple out. So if you're a small business and you have 10 clients, whatever it is, 10 customers, tell yourself, okay, these 2 customers, that's going to be my savings account. Everything else can go into back into the business or whatever. But you have to save money as an entrepreneur, because if something happens and you have a bad 3 months or whatever it is, I mean, you're going to need something to pull from. And so make sure you're setting up an emergency fund first, and then setting up an investment vehicle for yourself as well. That is like the slippery slope of entrepreneurship, is you put everything into your business hoping that it'll work out, and you really are taking a chance on, okay, I'll be able to save more money later if this works out. And if it doesn't, that can be kind of a sticky situation, to say the least. So, all of these things add up to, a financial freedom. I mean, that's where everybody's trying to get. And so believe me, if you're Generation Z and you start saving money at 25, it gives you options in your 40s that you are very, very thankful for. And if you're in your 30s or 40s, you have to make a conscious effort to start saving more money. And because the thing about it is when you're young, you think life is expensive. It does that does not go away. Life is always expensive. There's things that that come up. Houses are expensive. They're not, unless you're renting them out, they're not really producing income for you. All of these things, kids, everybody's got, things that you have to do just to keep the basically the train going of your household. And so we tell ourselves, okay, when I hit this point, I'll be able to save more money. When I get this done, I'll be able to save more money. But there's always going to be something. And so again, it is proactive. Pay yourself first. Make sure you're putting something back for yourself. You're the one doing the work. You are the one doing the work. So make sure you put something back for yourself, and write out a list and say, okay, these are my priorities. How am I going to build wealth and make sure that my my financial future is on solid footing? If you don't, if you don't work for an employer that offers a 401k or a retirement plan, you can do some on your own. So you can do your own IRA, which is individual retirement account. You can do a Roth IRA, which again has the tax benefits depending on your income. And so there's little things that you can do. Talk with somebody about what those options are. And really, if you haven't saved any money, make a year-end goal for yourself. Like, I got to invest something. I got to invest in something, and do it by the end of the year. Again, you can go do the SPY, the S&P 500. I mean, you're basically investing in the 500 most profitable companies in America. And it's the easy button. Set up an account and start putting money into the SPY. And if you do that over time, based on how history has gone, I mean, you're going to be very happy with that. So you got to do something. Doing something is better than doing nothing, right? Doing something is better than doing nothing. So, anyways, I hope this was helpful for you. I appreciate your time as always. Thank you for talking to us and reaching out to us on social media, letting us know what kind of episodes you want to hear about. I'm always happy to do that. It really is fun kind of talking about things that y'all are interested in. So anyways, don't mistake activity for achievement, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.